Hey everybody, and welcome back. Ready for another deep dive? This time we're tackling something that's, well, kind of fundamental to, everything we do.
Sounds intriguing.
We're talking communication.
Yeah.
And judging by the mountain of articles and notes you guys sent in, I think you're all looking to level up your communication game big time.
You got that right. Communication really is the bedrock of, well, everything. Relationships, sharing ideas, even just navigating the craziness of everyday life.
So our sources, they start by defining communication, right? But it's not just about words flying around. They make it clear that real communication is about getting information, ideas, even emotions across in a way that truly connects with the other person.
Yeah, it's like building a bridge. You can't just chuck something over and hope for the best. It has to actually reach the other side and be understood, you know?
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. But how do we build that bridge the right way?
Well, imagine baking a cake. You gotta have the right ingredients, but you also gotta know how to use them. Our sources, they highlight 6 key elements of effective communication.
6. Okay, lay them on me.
Clarity, conciseness, accuracy, relevance, timeliness, and active listening.
6 elements. Wow, that sounds like a lot to keep in mind. Okay, so clarity. That seems pretty straightforward. I mean, we all want our messages to be clear. Right?
Absolutely. But clarity, it goes beyond just using simple words. It's about really knowing your audience, tailoring your message to their specific needs, their level of understanding.
Okay, so speaking the same language, even if you're using different words, right?
Yeah, exactly. Think about it. A surgeon, for them, clarity might mean using very specific medical terms. But a teacher explaining something to a kid, well, they might use simple analogies, everyday language.
Gotcha. All right, what about conciseness? I think we've all been on the receiving end of those emails that are a mile long and take forever to decipher.
Right. Conciseness, it's all about making your message as powerful as possible. Get rid of the fluff, imagine you're writing a tweet. You only have so many characters, right? You got to get your point across quickly. That same principle applies to, well, any communication, really.
Okay, so get to the point, but don't sacrifice the meaning. All right, next up, accuracy. I'm guessing that's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, accuracy is essential, especially in a work setting, right? Where misinformation can have some serious consequences.
Right.
But it's not just about getting your facts straight. It's about checking your sources, making sure your information is up to date.
That makes total sense. All right, so clarity, conciseness, accuracy. What's next? Relevance. I'm assuming that means staying on topic, right?
Exactly. Relevance is all about making sure your message aligns with the conversation or the needs of your audience. Understanding what information is truly valuable and what's just, well, not really needed.
So no rambling on about, I don't know, your cat's latest antics during a board meeting.
Exactly. All right, now, timeliness might seem obvious, but it can actually be pretty tricky.
Oh, okay, I'm curious. Break it down for me.
Well, it's about delivering your message at the right time. Think about a crisis situation. Communicating quickly and efficiently can be the difference between, well, resolving a problem and having it blow up into something way bigger.
Yeah, time is definitely of the essence in those situations. Okay, we've covered 5 elements now. Last but not least, active listening. Isn't that just, listening?
Active listening is so much more than just passively hearing what someone's saying. It's about really engaging with them, asking questions to clarify things, reflecting back what you're hearing, showing them that you're genuinely interested.
You're right. It's about being fully present in the conversation, making the other person feel heard and understood. Okay, so those are the 6 essential ingredients for effective communication. But as with any recipe, things can go wrong. What are some of the common pitfalls we should be aware of?
Well, I think we can all relate to that feeling of frustration when we get a message that's just, well, unclear or confusing. Our sources, they call out lack of clarity as a major communication pitfall. It's like trying to navigate through a maze blindfolded.
Whoa, okay, so how do we avoid getting lost in that maze? It's not like we're intentionally trying to be unclear, right?
Of course not. But we can fall into traps, like using jargon or language that's way too complex, or just not considering our audience's perspective. The source gives a great example of this. They talk about this manager telling their team, we need to leverage synergies and optimize our workflow to achieve maximum ROI.
Sounds pretty impressive, huh?
It does, kind of, but what does it actually even mean?
Exactly. The team's probably just sitting there okay, what am I supposed to do differently?
Totally. The source, they suggest, like instead of saying leverage synergies, the manager could just say, hey, let's work together better. And instead of optimize workflow, how about just let's find ways to like streamline our processes? Right. Much clearer, and it actually tells people what to do. It's about taking those big abstract ideas and turning them into concrete steps that everyone gets.
That's such a good example. It kind of reminds me of this one time. Maybe I'll spare you the details on that one, but let's just say I've learned the hard way that jargon can really kill a conversation.
Oh, tell me about it. We've all been there. And speaking of communication killers, assumptions, those can be just as bad as jargon.
Assumptions? You mean like assuming that everyone knows what I'm talking about?
Exactly. Our sources point out that we tend to assume others have the same knowledge and experiences as us, but that's almost never the case, right?
Right. So how do we avoid falling into that assumption trap?
It's all about asking questions. Checking in to see if everyone's on the same page. Even something as simple as, does that make sense, can make a huge difference.
It's better to be safe than sorry, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially when it comes to, like, important information. All right, what about emotional barriers? Those seem a bit trickier.
Oh, for sure. Emotions, they play such a huge role in how we communicate. When we're stressed, angry, even just really excited, it can, cloud our judgment. And that can lead to all sorts of misunderstandings.
It's like when you get that email that makes your blood boil. You just fire off a reply without even thinking it through.
Oh, we've all been there. Hit send on a message we wish we could take back. That's why it's so important to, check in with ourselves, See how we're feeling before we communicate. If you're feeling overwhelmed, just step away for a minute, take a breath, and come back to it when you're calmer.
Cool down before you blow up. Solid advice. So we've talked about clarity, assumptions, emotional barriers. What other traps should we be looking out for?
Well, in this day and age, information overload is a real problem. Our sources, they really emphasize this. Dumping too much information on someone all at once, it's overwhelming. It's counterproductive.
Yeah, it's like trying to drink from a fire hydrant. You just end up getting soaked.
Right. The key is to prioritize. Break it down into bite-sized pieces. You can even use visuals like graphs or charts to help people process complex stuff.
So less is more, especially with complicated information. This is all making a lot of sense, but I gotta admit, I'm a bit skeptical about this next topic. AI as a communication coach.
It does sound kind of futuristic, right?
True.
But AI is already playing a big role in how we communicate. And while it's not about robots taking over, it can be a really powerful tool to help us improve.
Okay, I'm all ears. How exactly can AI help us communicate better?
Well, think about those grammar checkers and spell checkers. Those are all powered by AI, helping us catch typos, improve our sentence structure, make sure our writing is clear and professional. It's like having a virtual editor on call 24/7.
Okay, yeah, those are pretty useful. I use those all the time. But what about those, more complex communication challenges?
AI is actually getting incredibly good at translating languages, breaking down barriers, and allowing people from different cultures to communicate.
Wow, that's really cool. I've always wished I could speak a bunch of languages. Maybe AI can help me finally achieve that.
It's definitely getting us closer. Here's another example. AI can actually analyze the emotional tone of a message. It can tell if someone's angry or upset just based on their words.
Wait, seriously?
Yeah, it's called sentiment analysis. And it's especially helpful in online communication, where it can be hard to tell someone's tone.
So it's like having an emotional intelligence boost for your emails and texts. That's kind of wild.
Right. And there are even tools that can summarize long documents or conversations, saving us a ton of time and helping us focus on the important stuff.
So it's like having a personal assistant who can read through all those long reports and just tell you what you need to know.
Exactly. And some AI tools can even personalize messages, tailoring them to the recipient's preferences and communication style.
AI is like the Swiss Army knife of communication. But, I have to ask, doesn't this raise some ethical concerns? What about the potential for manipulation or even bias?
Those are totally valid concerns, and we need to be aware of them. But like any tool, AI can be used for good or for bad. It's up to us to use it responsibly.
You're right. It's about using AI to enhance our communication, not replace it altogether. Speaking of enhancing communication, let's circle back to something you mentioned earlier, the impact of communication on our time and productivity. I think we can all relate to that feeling of being just overwhelmed by emails, meetings, notifications, all that.
Oh, absolutely. Ineffective communication is a huge drain on our time and energy. Think about all the time wasted trying to figure out a confusing email or clarifying misunderstandings or even redoing work that wasn't done right the first time.
Ugh, it's the worst. So frustrating. Our sources argue that effective communication can actually save us time in the long run.
Yeah, exactly. When communication is clear and efficient, it prevents those misunderstandings in the first place. It reduces the need for rework and it lets teams work together smoothly. It's like streamlining a workflow, getting rid of all the unnecessary steps and bottlenecks.
So basically, when everyone's on the same page, working towards the same goals, productivity naturally goes up.
Exactly. Good communication builds a sense of shared purpose. It makes everyone feel accountable, and that allows people to, contribute their best work.
So it's not just about checking things off our to-do list?
Nope, it's way bigger than that. It's about creating a positive work environment where everyone feels heard, understood, and valued.
That's such a good point. It's about building a culture of communication, right? Where people feel comfortable speaking openly and honestly.
Yeah, exactly. When communication is a priority, it affects everything. Teamwork, morale, innovation, even a company's bottom line.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. But I think it's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day, and lose sight of the bigger picture. We're so focused on just getting things done that we forget how much time we're wasting on poor communication.
It's a trap we all fall into, for sure. But when we make a conscious effort to get better at communicating, the benefits are huge.
All right, before we wrap things up, let's just do a quick recap of what we've learned today. We started with those foundational elements of effective communication. Clarity, conciseness, all that good stuff. Then we explored some of the common pitfalls, those traps that can lead to miscommunication and frustration.
We talked about the importance of knowing your audience, choosing the right way to communicate, and really trying to understand the other person's perspective.
And we even dove into the world of AI and how it can help us communicate better.
Yeah, it's a super fascinating field that's constantly evolving.
Okay, I got to ask, what's the most important takeaway you want our listeners to leave with today?
Communication is a skill. And just like any skill, it can be improved with practice. It's a journey, not a destination.
I love that. It's about being mindful of how we communicate and being willing to learn and grow. And recognizing that good communication, it's an investment that pays off in countless ways.
Absolutely. And remember, it's not just about conveying information. It's about building relationships, fostering understanding, and just creating a more positive and productive world.
Well said. Our source is mostly focused on communication at work, which is super important. But it got me thinking, how much of this stuff applies to our personal lives too? Our relationships with our partners, family, friends. It's all built on communication, right?
Oh, totally. I think we often, put communication in these separate boxes, right? Work communication, personal communication. But the truth is, a lot of the same stuff applies across the board.
So if I'm trying to have a serious talk with my partner or, work through a disagreement with a friend, all those elements we talked about, they still matter.
Absolutely. Think about it. If you're not clear about how you feel or what you need in a relationship, how's the other person supposed to know,
Yeah.
How can they support you?
Yeah, that's true. And I guess being concise is important too. I can definitely ramble sometimes when I'm talking to my family. They'd probably just tune me out.
We all do it. But in personal relationships, what's even more important than in a work setting? Active listening.
Well, really? Why is that?
Because it's not just about understanding the words, right? It's about picking up on all those little cues, the emotions behind the words. Are they stressed, hurt, excited? Active listening helps us connect on a deeper level, build those strong bonds.
So it's not just hearing, it's really understanding where they're coming from.
Exactly. And empathy is huge here. Putting yourself in their shoes, trying to see things from their perspective, even if you don't agree.
That makes sense. And what about those communication traps? Do those pop up in our personal lives too?
Oh, yeah, all the time. Assumptions are a big one. We assume our partner just knows how we feel or what we're thinking. We assume our friends get our sense of humor. But those assumptions, they can lead to, major misunderstandings and resentment.
Oof, yeah, I've definitely been there. What about those emotional barriers? I know I can sometimes bring stress from work home, and it affects how I interact with my family.
That's super common. When we're stressed or upset, it's easy to just, react without thinking, say things we don't mean, or just shut down completely. Learning to manage those emotions and communicate even when we're not feeling our best, that's crucial for any relationship.
So how do we actually get better at this? It feels, more sensitive when it's someone we really care about.
It takes work, but it's so worth it. Start with active listening. Really pay attention to what they're saying, not just the words, but like their body language too. Ask questions to make sure you understand and let them know you're hearing them. And don't forget to show your appreciation. Tell the people you care about how much they mean to you. Little things go a long way.
Yeah, that's great advice. What about giving feedback? That seems kind of tricky in personal relationships.
It is, but it can also be really helpful, you know? The key is to do it with kindness and respect. Focus on specific things instead of making it general. And try to be constructive. Like, talk about how things could be even better.
So instead of saying, like, you're always late, maybe say something like, hey, I get kind of stressed when we're running behind for things that are important to me.
Exactly. It's about expressing your own feelings and needs in a way that helps them understand instead of making them defensive.
This has been such a great deep dive. We've covered so much, like the basics of good communication, the things we got to watch out for, even how AI is changing the way we talk to each other. But for me, the biggest takeaway is just how much all this stuff matters in every part of our lives. Not just at work, but in our relationships too.
I couldn't agree more. Communication, it really is the foundation of human connection. It's how we build those relationships, share ideas, work through disagreements, and create a life that's, well, more meaningful.
Absolutely. And as we wrap up here, I want to leave everyone with this thought. Becoming a better communicator, it's a journey. It's not something you just achieve overnight. It takes practice, patience, and a willingness to keep learning and growing. But I truly believe that the more we invest in these skills, the stronger our relationships will be in every part of our lives.
That's a great way to put it. And remember, everyone communicates differently. What works for one person might not work for another. The important thing is to be mindful, respectful, and always open to learning.
Keep practicing, keep learning, and keep those conversations flowing. Who knows? Maybe someday we'll all be getting communication tips from our robot buddies. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive.
This is DigitView.